Welcome back to the Zen Meathead Podcast, where we strive to elevate humanity one conversation at a time. This week, I had the pleasure of reading a book of a friend of mine. I would like to say mind blown. Holy shit. I came out with only one piece of sadness after reading your book, Raji. And welcome to the podcast, Raji Raj.
Thank you.
Your new book, Daring to be Different. That would have changed my career. My sadness was reading your book, realizing how closely I worked around you for how many years at Microsoft, and I never had the opportunity to be mentored by, work for. You hit on absolutely every problem I have ever considered in my career, and so just nice, tight, concise, eloquent.
Yeah.
How did you come to do this?
So a couple of things there. Number one, the nice, concise, the eloquent bit, the nice, concise bit, especially I want to talk about that a little bit because it was purposefully done, why I did it in a nice, concise way. And I talked about it yesterday with one of the people that I mentor at Microsoft as well. The reason why it's only 150 pages and most people say that they can finish the book in like a couple of days, if you just sit and read it for a couple of hours, you'll probably finish it in a couple of hours, right? The reason is that I know the people that are going to get the most benefit out of a book like this are going to be very busy.
Yep.
They have lots of things that they're juggling. They have work, they have families, they have fun side things like this Zen Meathead podcast. I'd love to know a little bit more about that and why that name, but let's finish my answer and then you're answering the question. So I wanted to keep it very short and very to the point because this is not a long project. This is not a memoir. As much as I'm telling my own stories, and the reason I'm telling my own stories is it is important to relate to the author, and stories are a very good way to really, connect with the author, but also to make the advice that the author is giving and the points that I'm making in the book really stick. So that's why I kind of kept it short. It's not a memoir. I want it to be very actionable and very easy to consume, very accessible for most people. The second thing, I know you and we've known each other for a long time. I've run with Sarah. We've had a long friendship, and I didn't set out to write a book like 20 years ago. I talk about this quite a bit at Microsoft as well. Pretty much everything that has happened to me in my life and my career, it's almost like I didn't seek out to do as much as there was an opportunity, there was a need, there was something that called to me. And I wanted to seize that opportunity, and I became curious, and I sort of drummed up the courage to go do it. And I talk about it in the book as well. Yep. This whole thing with public speaking, I'm very nervous as a public speaker. I'm actually pretty okay now because, you're my friends, and this is a very comfortable studio, and I feel very, comfortable here. But generally, when I'm speaking in public in front of 10,000 people, or even, the very first time when I spoke in front of 400 people, I was super nervous. I was like, oh my God. I started learning English when I was 20 years. I learned English to read and write English when I was little, but I started speaking English when I was 20 years old. And I was worried that I was going to forget my words. I was super nervous. When that opportunity came to me, when somebody came and told me, hey, we want someone like you to keynote at the Microsoft Ignite conference, which is like 1 million people online and 10,000 to 20,000 people in an arena. Super, super, super nervous. And I had to drum up the courage to really go and speak in front of those people, right? But I didn't plan to be a public speaker. In fact, if you read the book, I actually didn't plan to even be a computer science professional, right? A technology professional. I wanted to be a doctor. And I didn't end up being a doctor. It was one of the very first failures of my life. But, again, that goes to the point, sometimes failures can fuel success. So a lot of this, writing the book is the same way. I mentor a lot of people at Microsoft. I mentor a lot of people in the industry. And, when I started writing my advice that I was giving to the people that I mentored, it started resonating with people.
Yeah.
And a lot of people came to me and, said that really helped them. There was one specific moment I clearly remember at Microsoft outside the elevator, someone stopped me and she said, hey, you must be Raji. I follow you on LinkedIn. Last week, I read this article that you wrote about fear of public speaking. And I'm just going into this big meeting in my team. And, I've been so nervous, and it was so timely. it's almost as though universe has conspired to put this article in front of me, and it really has helped not only get over my fear of public speaking, but also to have like 2 or 3 clear, concrete points that I can remember that I can use in my presentation, right? So that kind of inspired me to do more of that, to write more of my experiences, my perspectives, my advice. And then it naturally ended up being, why not write a book? You know, now people can actually have it on their shelves. They can go back and refer to things that I'm talking about as opposed to everything being online. So, you know, this whole thing with writing this book, well, maybe I could have written it sooner, but I think this is the right moment also to have, you know, had these rich conversations with the people that I have mentored and be able to convey those experiences. I think it's a good
once you
time.
can successfully teach it and give those nice little concise messages.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and it's crazy. I don't know what the statistic is, but there are quite a few people out there in the world who fear public speaking more than death.
Right.
More than death?
More than
That's
death.
right. That's
Like people would
Wow.
choose to die. I don't know if that's
I mean,
literally, but
I understand the fear of
if
public
given
speaking. That
the
might
option,
be aggressive.
Yeah.
I think I'm just going to run away instead.
They're
Nah.
so terrified of the idea of getting up
Yeah.
in front of people.
So, Chris, have you had a fear of public speaking? I know you are a podcast host, and I'd love to hear about the podcast, but tell us about you.
Yes and no. I think I was able to work through that fear as a child. I grew up trained classical instruments. My mother is a professional violinist. All of the children in my family, you pretty much picked an instrument, 4 or 5-ish, and it's like you were going to play that through high school, no questions asked. Like you're getting private lessons. This is not optional. This is part of being a kid in this house. So I had to face off with a lot of terror of, you know,
Performance anxiety.
performance
Yeah.
constantly. And I remember my mom, you know, all but dragging me onto stage, crying and like trying to work me through it. So I very much understand it. The music and the martial arts really got me very comfortable speaking. At this point, I would say no. I still probably overly prepare for public speaking events simply because I want it to pack a punch.
Right.
But this is just fun to me. Like
Yeah.
I'm bringing in super brilliant, passionate people and like, hey, tell us about your life lessons. It's like, this is just fun, easy conversation. Plus, you know, like you said, it's a nice, cozy little environment. So there's not really the pressure feel of it. And
We trick ourselves into not having it be a
It's
big
just
deal.
a conversation with 3 friends, you know?
that's really what we went after was because I remember the first time I was invited to be on a podcast, I was so nervous. Like, I need to know the bullets we're going to talk about. Like, I need to know when you're going to prep me for these questions. And I spent weeks and, you know, it turned into a 30-minute interview. And it was no big deal. And it was highly well received. So that really kind of lit the fire, you know. And then my lovely wife sitting here at one point finally was just like, you've been talking about this forever. Just buy the equipment and do the thing. So.
Yeah.
Right.
And why Zen Meathead?
So in my growing up, I definitely fit a different demographic in my 20s. And at some point I decided that my life wasn't working the way I wanted it to. And I started like biohacking, if you will, and exploring, I think where I really hit a lot of stuff was Eastern type things, meditation, dry needling, all these yoga, you know, energy work, breath work, all these things that, you know, 20-year-old Chris would have laughed at and probably said some really not nice things about. But as I found the right practitioner that really helped me get into that, thanks again to my lovely wife, I started to really embrace the Eastern side of things. And I've always been a gym rat. I've always loved to lift weights and whatnot. So I've always joked about being a meathead. And then I don't remember how Sarah came up with it.
Oh, well, so he has been on this journey, we both have, of kind of elevating our way of thinking and trying to be more at peace and bringing light and goodness into the world. And so the way that I thought of it was Zen Meathead. On the board upstairs, you'll see like Zen Meathead, like introduce your Zen to your head and get them integrated. And then it turned
Very
into
interesting.
the Zen Meathead because that's the hope is that he gets to be a Zen Meathead.
That's the hope, huh?
Yeah.
So it's, as with
that
almost
way.
everything in my life, it's a double entendre or a pun of some sort.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it all gained speed so quickly. Like we went from, you know, bought $100 USB mic, decided that sounded like crap, to sitting in the studio today, we're only 6 months, 7 months into this now.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
the name, a lot of the stuff, it was just like, we had been joking about the Zen Meathead. It's actually my Instagram handle as well. So it's just kind of evolved into this,
Right.
what we're doing right now.
No,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I love the connection to Zen because I think you probably read in the book as well. I do a lot of meditation, and I think that is super, super helpful in getting into the right headspace when you're in a very sort of high octane profession like technology. You tend to like get up and it often happens even now, after 20 years in the industry, I wake up and my head is just buzzing with thoughts. And that's good in a way, maybe because you have a lot of ideas, you're constantly thinking, you're active, and it makes your life interesting. But at the same time, you have to have some control over that. And, in order to be able to focus and do the right things and do the small number of things that you can do in your limited amount of, time you have on earth really well. So I think that, I talk about the meditation piece, not only with respect to how do you take control of the stories in your head and how do you take control of, the focus, right? I think that's really nice that you are into that way of life as well.
I've fought with it for years. I've been through cycles of up and down with it. It is the one modality that, without doubt, is always a struggle to build the practice around. I'm starting again, just as of recently, daily meditation. It's so calm. I mean, it's chaotic at first, but its ability in 10 or 15 minutes a day to just be able to, you choose your state.
Right.
What are you doing today? What are you focusing on? What's important? And it's ironic to me. I love exploring high caliber CEO types, and so meditation is always on the list.
Right.
Those people always start their day with their practice, and almost unanimously that includes meditation.
Yeah. No, I think that's the thing, right? Like you said, 15 minutes, 10 minutes of meditation in the morning, because a lot of times people get into this, I have to meditate like 2 hours a day in order to get that kind of mental clarity. I think, I don't know if you've read this book, Atomic Habits. It's by James Clear.
Yeah.
It's a great book. And,
love it.
he talks a lot about those little habits that you can build into your day and how that can really become part of your life, and you can expand those, but you don't want to set the bar so high that you're really not gonna do 2 hours of meditation a day. If you're having a very busy life with work and family and all of that, you have to start with 5 minutes. That's how I started. I'm doing 15 minutes. I don't know if you're doing more than that. I do 15 minutes a day. First thing in the morning, get out of bed, come downstairs,
onto the mat,
sit down on my cushion, and just do 15 minutes. That's all.
Mine's sitting right over there by your bag.
Oh, I see.
This is the little meditation room.
Yeah, I don't have like a setup or anything, a fancy setup with a Buddha or something like that. It's just on my couch, just like yours. I have a little cushion, I have a little throw because I'm always cold, and 15 minutes, and I have so much peace and quiet in my head that I can carry on with the rest of my day with so much more clarity and focus. And I think that's a very good habit for your listeners as well.
Anybody
if they're
and
interested in
everybody.
trying.
Yeah. It's very impactful.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, we had a really cool experience yesterday. We don't meditate together very often, and we did yesterday, and it was really cool. Just like this open flow of energy. It was really very inspiring.
Very
woo-woo.
into the woo-woo hippie dippy these days. It's funny, and I'm trying so much to share that with. I have friends on all over the spectrum, whether it's religious, political, whatever it might be. But I really do like to talk to, hope that this message comes through to some of my older friends. Like, hey, I remember like trying to invite male friends to like, hey, let's go to a yoga class together. Like, dude, bro, what? Like, it's the best. Like, give it a shot. You mentioned the whole, different experiences, James Clear, the Atomic Habits, and that made me think when we spoke with Donna, who you know as well, the connecting the dots, just collecting dots, these different experiences, the podcast, all of your mentoring, coming together into this obscenely beautiful culmination. By the way,
right? Which even mentions the dot collection.
That's
I think
right.
you attribute it to Steve Jobs.
That's right. His famous commencement speech, he talks about that. And I don't know, I think this was also in the movie, what's it called? WW84, Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman 84.
Oh, yes.
Wonder
Yes.
Woman 84.
Yes.
Yes. So I actually wrote a blog post about that. The year that came out, I kind of, there was a lot of criticism about the movie and people were disappointed and whatnot. But I really love the movie, not only because it's a very strong female lead. And if you go into my Netflix collection, it's always my husband and I, we share the same Netflix profile. And, we're like, husband is, why is it always strong female lead? That's the only recommendation we get because I love those kinds of, movies and television series.
Me too.
It's not just that reason I love the movie for. There's a lot of life lessons. And in that movie, I think when I wrote the blog, I quoted that as well. They talk about how when you have to look back on your life and try to connect the dots, because when you're looking forward, you're sitting here, I'm doing this podcast. I don't know how this podcast is going to connect with the rest of the events in my life that's going to happen in the future, because I don't know what my future is going to bring.
Yeah.
But then maybe 10 years from now, I'll look back on it and this is somehow going to connect with something else. So it's always important. That's why I really am a strong believer in sharing your stories and your experiences. And I talk about this in terms of Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, also talks about that too. We all have our unique stories. My story is one of being born in India, losing my mother when I was 5 years old, being in these cramped flats, going from one relative's house to another, 2 years, different schools, different households, different. It was very much a childhood of instability. But at that time, when I was a child, I kind of like, oh my God, this is just another house, I don't know what these people are doing. I don't know what the school is about. Oh man, I miss my friends. I have to now make new friends. And I was a 10-year-old girl. You know how when you're a child, it can be very hard to do all of those things. But I now look back on those experiences and how they were so foundational in building up my professional character and identity. Now, I mean, this week has been very hard for a lot of us in the technology field. Right? Lots of layoffs, it's a very challenging time for the world. But change is something that I have gotten used to through all the things that I have overcome in my life. So if any person that's listening to this, if you look back on your own life and your own stories, you can see what led up to the character that you have today, the personality you have today. And I think what you're going to do today, all those habits that you're building, all those experiences you're collecting, those are all going to, result in the future you and the future personality that you have. So it's always important to think about that and look back and see what led to you today.
Yeah. Well, and it's also incredibly helpful. You mentioned, being introspective about the things that we think and the stories that we create for ourselves and how we choose to either limit or allow ourselves to grow based on our experiences. And so having the ability to be introspective about why maybe we do the things that are successful or help us be successful, and why we do some of the things that maybe aren't so contributory to success.
Right.
And really being able to look at ourselves deeply and understand that and be open to modifying what we need to.
Yeah. And journaling is another habit that really helps. I know you have just gotten into writing analog, right?
Yeah.
I do that too. Probably not every day as I do meditation, but often when I'm conflicted or confused about something, writing is somehow, it helps me really clarify my thoughts, right? Because it's a jumble always. And somehow when you write it down and you kind of put a structure around it, you're able to structure your thoughts really well. And journaling helps me be introspective. Sometimes I really do a little bit of meta thinking, right? Like, why am I thinking the way I am thinking?
Yeah.
Let me get down to the bottom of this, right? So it's helpful quite a lot for mental health.
Yeah. Well, and unbeknownst to many people, we are in the process of fleshing out an idea for a book as well. So,
oh, yay! Exciting!
I know, sort of in the vein of what we're trying to do with the podcast as well. So, it is very timely and poignant.
Yeah, seeing you write a book was like, yes, let's talk to Raji.
There is a chapter in the book about writing
a book.
And exactly. And I can talk a lot about writing a book because now I have gone through the process of publishing, and that's a completely different ballgame in itself, right?
Yeah.
But writing even before you get to the stage of publishing. I think a lot of times people get intimidated because, oh my God, it's 150 plus pages. How am I going to write that much? But I think, a lot of it comes down to just having the discipline every day to sit down and just write something.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the Tale of Two Cities. It doesn't have to be War and Peace. It's just writing your thoughts down. And it's, even if it is just, whatever comes into your head, you write it down, and then you can revise later when you're ready to publish. But having the discipline to and that's what I used to do, because I have a pretty, I have a team that I manage around the world in 5 countries, on 4 continents, 100 plus people, engineers that I manage, and I have a pretty busy job. And I, Sarah, I love, physical activity. I love running. I used to do some weightlifting, not anymore. That has fallen by the wayside. But, I love to do many things. I go on these hikes and whatnot. I train a lot for that as well. So my day is usually full. But I think that I get up at 5 o'clock or 4:30 or whatever it is, depending on the day, just half an hour of writing. That's all. It's just like the meditation thing we talked about, 15 minutes. Don't say that you're going to write for the next 2 hours. Just half an hour. Sit down and write something. On
Anything.
Anything. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can just throw it away. Just like you said about this podcast, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. If we don't like it, it's an experiment. We'll throw it away, right? So.
Yeah, and I love when you were describing in the book about, when you're staring at a blank page and you don't know what to write, just pick something to describe, like you talked about describing your father writing.
That's right.
And it actually gives me chills just thinking about it, like being able to pull from our experience. And if you're lacking direction, just pick something and describe it from your memory.
That's right. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing too, right? Like when you're writing something you know about, it flows that much more quickly as opposed to you have to now, even if you're writing, I mean, I've never written fiction. That might be the next thing I want to try.
Yeah, I'm there as well. Yeah.
But I think when you're writing things that you know about, it's just sets the bar low, because you are writing just like, when I'm up on stage and I'm talking about something that my team is doing, I am the expert in that, and I know what I'm talking about. So there's a lot of comfort and thinking that way as well, that you're writing things that you know about. So it's not a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to delve into some of the stuff. So one, I'd like to start out by saying I hope that Microsoft considers adding this to Neo, because seriously, there's been
we were talking about this
2 or 3 things I've run across in my career at Microsoft that I looked back and I'm like, if I had gotten this in the first year, the entire trajectory of my career would have been very, very different. So having this beautifully gelled down little compendium and it flowed very naturally from me as well, from a career progression standpoint. You come into a big tech company, you're not familiar with the culture, you're fresh out of school, you don't know the people, the stuff. It's very nerve-wracking, as an individual contributor, and then evolving through, getting to being a manager or a large school leader, and then, going from there. And you give these nice, concise. So I started to write some notes on some of the things that struck me that I wanted to just kind of explore with you. And if there's certain things you want to dive into as well, let's do it. This one I read recently that stuck with me hugely. Why am I not able to read my own handwriting?
Oh, we forgot the quote today.
Oh, we did forget the quote. Why can't I not read my own handwriting?
No, what you long for.
There we go. Know what you long for, and what you're giving up in return. And that was the more salient point to me. Is I'm running into this analysis paralysis of opportunities in my life right now.
Right.
People are like,
you poor thing. Well, I have so many opportunities. I don't know what to pick.
Oh man,
that wasn't necessary.
It's a great problem to have.
It is a good problem, but
it's still frustrating.
Yeah.
The first part makes perfect sense to me. Knowing what I long for, but then knowing what I'm giving up in return.
Right.
I'm actively choosing to not cash in on this opportunity because I want to focus the little bit of time that I have on this. Like, it seems like it's a hard jump for me to go from, I have 100 things that I can do. All of them are probably going to have some level of positive stuff towards my goals.
Right.
But some, for whatever reason, may be more or less important. How do I narrow that down to 10 things?
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that's interesting, and I'm sure you've gone through it too, a standard Microsoft training is the coaching habit. And one of the things they talk about is knowing what you want to say yes to and knowing what you have to say no to in order to make that happen.
Yeah.
Because it's about boundaries and protecting those boundaries.
Saying no has not been my strong suit historically.
No, but so you'll hear a lot of book recommendations when you're talking to me in general, but
Good,
today
good.
as well. But because I love reading,
Yeah.
I'm reading all the time when I'm not doing other things. So I recommend this book called 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Berkman. It was one of the best books I read. I believe I read it in 2021, maybe it was 2020. It was a very good book, and the essence of that book is that, look, we're human beings. We are limited by definition. Like, we have a certain number of weeks that we
Are going to be here.
are going to be here. So your life, you have to accept the fact that your life is going to be limited. You're not going to exhaust all the experiences in the world.
It's true.
You're not going to, even if you travel a lot and you make it a point in your life to travel a lot, you're not going to see every single place on earth. That's simply not possible. You're not going to do every single thing that you can potentially do, and you can potentially do well, because your life, you only have a
finite.
limited amount of time. It's a very finite life. So I think that acceptance is key, right? That especially for people who love to do a lot of things, or very active and want to leave a mark behind, want to help people, want to make a difference. There's just so many things that we can do. But then you have to accept the fact that you cannot do all of them at once. And the key to being able to do something well is the prioritization, right? What are you prioritizing?
Yeah, because a lot of people are kind of faced with FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a new thing.
That's right, because we want to do everything all at once, right? And that's the other thing. I was talking to someone yesterday. I was telling her that, she said that, well, when I was, a new mom, it was very difficult for me to focus on work. And so I feel like I really did not do a good job at work. And, she felt a sense of, man, I wish I had done more at work. And I always like to think of my life in a longitudinal way, right? It's not like the work-life balance aspect of it. It's not like every single day I do X number of hours of work and X number of, hours of life, right? That's not, I feel like that's not the right way to balance your life and work.
Nope.
It has to be more longitudinal. Sometimes you're going to focus more on your work and less on your life. And sometimes you're going to focus more on your life, and you should be okay and proud of that too.
Yeah.
And less on work. And that's okay. That's okay that you're not at that specific time, you're not giving your 180% to work, because you're giving 180% to your life. Whatever is going on with your personal projects, with your personal life, maybe that is the right thing to do. And you shouldn't try to have this mythical thing in your head that every single day, every single year, every single week, you need to have a perfect balance of work and life, right?
Yeah. It's going to be a constant struggle for me, I fear. And as you were talking there, it led into another that we talk about quite a bit, that shocks me coming from folks like you: imposter syndrome. Because in my experience of you, I saw, you and Sarah working out over the years and whatnot. But other than that, every time I've seen you, you've been leadership in organizations that I've been working in. You were doing presentations at Microsoft, or all of these huge tech events. How does a leader in tech who gets up and speaks in front of thousands of people about all kinds of things that she's a subject matter expert in, how does that person feel imposter syndrome like?
I think I write about this in the book. Pretty much every single person feels it in some way, right? I work with a CVP, born here, raised here, a Caucasian male, right?
Yep.
And I always thought that, oh my God, this guy, he's so confident. He comes across so assertive and so confident. He must not feel like a fake, like I'm feeling right now. No, not right now, as in when I'm in front of all these executives and in a conference room full of executives, and I'm this young brown woman that is sitting there, that doesn't even have a complete command of the language or whatnot. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't know that much business. And all these people are talking about business. I'm an engineer, and all these different things that in your head you make up into these huge hurdles. Whereas, the other people that are looking at you are seeing something completely different. These are stories that are going on in your head. I thought that this person, this, Caucasian male CVP, that, that was a very good business person. Like I learned a lot from him from a business point of view, right? Like not from an engineering point of view. And we became friends and we started having conversations. And he told me that I actually feel imposter syndrome because I'm surrounded by engineers. Like you guys, all of you people, you come from technical backgrounds, and I'm not from I started in this company as a salesperson.
Yep.
And I'm now here leading a group of, mostly engineering people. And so I feel like I'm an imposter here. Mm-hmm. So how do you feel like you're an imposter? You're an engineer. And I'm like, oh, you're all senior people with a lot more experience than me. And I don't know business. You know business. I only know engineering. And in this role, I think you need to know more business than it. So I feel like everybody has these stories in their heads. Yeah. Yeah, that has been the revelation over the years as I get more and more experience and I start to work with more people that are seasoned in the industry. And I have these very, candid conversations with them. I feel like that's the theme. And in a way, and I talk about this in the book, in a way, it's actually a good thing. Having that sense of, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing here is a good thing because you're putting yourself outside your comfort zone.
Yep.
And I've always found that is the way you can grow, right?
Yeah.
You're doing something right if you're feeling that you're not up to the job.
If it's uncomfortable, you're reaching.
Yeah.
Which
Oof,
that was a
I'm
really
so there right now.
huge point that you brought up that I loved that I'd never considered. I remember, I don't know the sentence exactly, but basically it's good for you to sign up for things that are slightly out of your wheelhouse.
Right.
Don't be ridiculous, but definitely like you don't know this
Sometimes
technology, for
be
instance.
audacious.
Right.
Yeah, jump in and sign up,
Right.
learn the technology on the fly. Like, yeah, you're going to fumble around and mess it up, but that's how we improve and evolve.
Right.
Yeah. And I remember I recently had the opportunity to go from an individual contributor to a lead and a manager. And I remember talking with our friend Taylor and God bless him. He's been managing people for quite some time. And he was like, hey, you're going to mess it up. Right. Like 100%, no questions asked. You're going to mess it up. You're not going to do it perfectly. So just be ready for it.
Right.
And know that that's normal. And him helping normalize that feeling of, a lot of times I feel like I'm just falling backwards with nothing to catch me. And it's exhilarating, but it's also somewhat terrifying sometimes. So yeah.
Shout out to the Cloud Taylor,
Yeah.
Taylor Brown. Woo! He also, it's ironic, when I moved into my first management role, he gave me the same sit down and just like, I need you to understand, you're going to suck at this for a while and that's okay. Just prepare yourself. It's like, that took a lot of pressure. Those are the kinds of gems though, that you suss out in your book. I sit down and have a conversation with a manager. That was a piece of gold. Like if being able to sit down and read your book and it's like, hey, here's 20 or 30 super nailed down salient points with examples.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And talking about, you talk a lot in the book about being a misfit.
Right.
And I feel like everyone feels like they're a misfit in some way or another. Like I'm the only blonde in my family. I'm the only one who's gone on to higher education. I'm the only one who's, I was the only one in tech until James, but, I've taken a different path and we feel that way. And as women in tech, that presents its own set of challenges and opportunities. And so, I love your embracing of that misfitness.
I think so. I think you said the key word there. I think there are challenges, but also opportunities, right? I think being different, and that's the power of diversity, I think, is that whether you are thinking differently because you have a different background, you're from the humanities and you're in technology, or you're from the technology background, you're in humanity, whatever it is, I think being able to think differently and being able to bring that difference to the table, I think is very powerful. And I think both for the individual who feels like a misfit and for the organization that has this diversity, I think it's a huge plus. And that's why I talk about this too, that, a lot of times I have these conversations with people that are coming into my office and it's like, women, a lot of them, they're like, oh, I'm told that I'm very good at, communication, collaboration, but I'm a developer, and this doesn't feel like the right place for me. And it feels like there's a lot of people that are not like me. They like to sit in front of their computers and just write code, whereas I like to work with people. I feel like, if you like to work with people, it's actually a plus, because your colleagues in that discipline, if they're not doing that, then it's a strength for you that you can actually really lean into and see if you can craft your job in such a way where you're not only coding, but you're also really using and leveraging the strength that you have, which is working with people and collaborating. It doesn't have to be so black and white in any profession, I feel like.
Yeah, we put a lot of limitations on ourselves.
Right.
Well, it's funny. You talked just recently about your transition from being an individual contributor into more of a leadership type role. And one of the things you'd mentioned as well, what got you here won't get you there.
Right.
Yeah.
And that weird state in that transition where you go from being an individual contributor, and I knew like I needed to put these reports together. I needed to work on these different things to be successful and to deliver. So I knew what got me here.
Right.
Now I get put into, or Sarah gets put into a leadership role. And a lot of the things that she was doing all of a sudden have very little impact, and she has to figure out new levers.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. What made me successful as an individual contributor does not make me successful as a lead and a manager.
Absolutely.
And they don't tell you these things
Right.
necessarily. And coming to that realization.
Right. I think Microsoft these days are doing a much
They're
better
getting better,
job at, how do you train people managers, and what are some of the coaching habit is a very good example that you mentioned, right? I think those are, a lot of things that I learned about Microsoft, I have to be, a lot of things I learned about leadership, I learned at Microsoft, right? Either through training or from people around me.
Definitely.
But you're 100% right that there is no, we learn a lot of technical skills when we are training for our our role here in technology, but we don't learn people skills. And when we make that transition, nobody's setting us down and telling us that these are the things you need to understand about people. Like I said, there are certain training classes that Microsoft put me through that, a lot of those lessons is what I'm talking about in this book as well. But I think that it's a very different sort of a role, right? With technology, you're sitting in front of the computer and you're writing code. You have a very concrete problem. And you can see that once you've solved the problem or once you've figured out why your code is not working, it's very concrete. It's almost instantaneous. And you get that sense of instant satisfaction, right? At the end of the day, even today, I don't code a lot in my day job, but I do have a lot of personal projects that I do coding for at home.
Yep.
And sometimes when I'm on a weekend when I'm coding, at the end of the day, I can actually see my code working, and I have a sense of completion, a sense of closure.
Yes.
You know what I mean, right? But with working with people, that's not quite the case, right? Because first of all, it's not so deterministic. It's not so black and white. When you're coaching someone, when you're getting someone to, really step up to their full potential, and, when you're doing all of those things, it will take a while before you see the fruits of your action. And you have to have that patience. Number two, there are lots of reasons why people do things they do, lots of ways in which people can be excited and motivated, and lots of ways in which people can get de-energized, right?
Yep.
You have to really understand people, and it's much more complex than understanding even the data structures and algorithms and the code that you're writing, right? So we don't have that kind of training that we have for data structures and algorithms and code for people. It's all a lot. As a manager, you have to learn doing the job, how you have to do the job, right? But that's what I also find in, stepping from being an individual contributor to a manager. That challenge excited me. I always love these challenges where, like we talked about earlier, it just puts me outside my comfort zone.
Yeah.
I have to learn new things. I probably am going to be really bad at it for a while, and then I'll learn how to be good at it. By the way, even for coding, we talked a little bit about early in career experiences. I had 6 years of training in computer science before I got my first job at Microsoft.
Yeah.
I got my first job outside Microsoft, but my first role at Microsoft, I had 6 years of training and a few years of, working in a small company. But I still felt like, when I started writing my code, and I write about this in the book as well, and sending my code to review by my peers, I got dozens and dozens of comments. Like, you can redesign this here. You can write this differently. You can, you have to probably comment this here. Lots of critical feedback which at the time, by the way, was very painful because this is almost like, oh my God, they're criticizing my work and I worked on it for so many hours and I feel
It's an extension of
perfect,
you.
right? Exactly, right? So you feel very, it's very painful
Naked
emotionally. Exactly.
and bare, yeah.
It's like, oh, are they saying I really suck at this?
Yeah. I don't belong here, I
Which
guess.
goes back to the stories,
Right.
that we tell ourselves.
But I think that's the thing, right? Like initially, you have to not be able to do the job really, really excellently and use that growth mindset to get better and have that curiosity to say, how can I get better at this? And, do a lot of like, it's the same thing as lifting weights, I guess. When I started lifting weights, it was like 5 pounds. Oh, this is very painful for lifting 5 pounds. And then over time, you get better and better. But for that little while, when you're going through the process of getting better, you have to be okay with looking bad and doing not such a great job at what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's really hard to learn to not require yourself to be an expert the first time you try something.
Right.
Yeah. It shuts you off to a lot of really cool opportunities.
The practice.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because in the book, you talk about debugging people.
Yes.
And you kind of allude to it, or I guess you use that process, and it's apparent in a bunch of different things that you talk about in the book. But it really, from a technology-based perspective, it really helped me see differently the idea of trying to figure people out. If I think about it from a debugging standpoint, and I think about like, what was the input? What is the output? Like, what are the parameters?
Right.
What, what's the system? It makes it, well, I'm hoping, I just read about it recently, but I'm hoping that helps me kind of flip that switch into trying to figure out or being better at figuring out what motivates people and demotivates people. And so,
I mean, I did say that it is not, people are not so deterministic as code, but a lot of those patterns can be used in understanding people too. Like you said, the methodical way in which we approach code, I think we can take that mindset and apply it to other domains as well, like, working with people. But also, a lot of times when we're writing code and we're debugging, there's an experimental way in which we do it. Okay, let me put this print statement here and see what happens. Let me do this here and see what happens. We tinker with it quite a bit. And those are little baby steps and experiments that we do. And that really works well for, debugging code. I have also found it works for life.
Debugging people.
Debugging people, but also life, right? What am I capable of, right? Like, for instance, I talk about this in the book when I started running, right? I did not run when I was growing up. We did not have physical education classes in India for girls like we have here, right? So I actually became an athlete after coming here, right? And even saying the word I'm an athlete, that's very foreign to me. But I started running when I was in Canada, when I was going through my master's, program in the University of British Columbia. And it was like less than a mile. It was literally like 5 minutes. I'm just going to run to the end of that block. And it's kind of like, even that was very difficult, right?
Yeah.
So you have to take those baby steps and you have to see, do I like this? Can I do a little bit more? Do I want to, try more? And then it ended up in me running a couple of marathons. I mean, there were a lot of hurdles to cross before I could actually finish the 2 marathons that I wanted to run. But, that's how I feel like a lot of times your life experiences, you can get richer and richer life experiences, but you said, you wanted to hack your own body, and it's similar life hacking, right? Like, what more can I do? Can I write a blog article? Can I publish my, my thoughts in just an article, and then maybe over time that becomes a book, right? So I think doing that sort of experimentation is very helpful.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I would love if you were willing to write a primer on, going from having ideas to being a published author. Like, even that some of us sit here and go, wow, that seems inaccessible.
Yeah. We talked about Donna. Donna and I are actually thinking of doing like a webinar on that.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll start with that and see where we go with that.
Yeah. We just last Friday did her side hustle. We called it a workshop.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Boy, howdy, did we get some homework.
Oh, yeah. For 3 months.
There's between the other program I'm doing and that, pretty much what I expect my days to look like has completely changed into nothing like what it used to.
And what is the other program you're working on?
I'm doing a life coaching program. One of our previous guests, Lori Prutzman, the Seattle burnout coach.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Exciting.
We listened to her. Life coach. I like exploring any new modality to improve your life. So life coaching was like, oh, I've never really heard about this. We brought her in, and I recently a company that I was working at went under, and so I'm in this spot of figuring out what I want to do with my life when I grow up. So we finished interviewing Lori, and Sarah kind of looks at me and she's like, "You need to work with Lori."
Right.
So.
Right. So that's awesome that, this is the thing I talk a lot about in the book as well. Adversity is the first step to actually, having a fabulous opportunity, a fabulous life, right? You talked about, the company that you're working with went under, and now you have all these new opportunities in front of you, and, you're probably going to pursue one or many of them, and you're going to have fun, you're going to be successful. So I think that there was a program on NPR yesterday, and they were talking about how now with all the layoffs in the tech industry, there's a huge opportunity for more startups to start in this area,
Yeah.
right? There's going to be a startup boom in the Seattle area. All these people that are extremely talented with a lot of experience, with a lot of time now, actually will start thinking about things to do with their life. And who knows, maybe we'll have the next Microsoft, the next Amazon, the next, Google starting up in this area because of this adversity that we're all going through now. Right?
Yep. Yeah, I will tell you, I feel for the folks that have been affected recently.
Yeah.
In 2014, I was part of one of those big layoffs, and that was an ego hit. Whew.
Yeah, and I got it in 2002 and just barely made it through.
Right.
So, yeah.
It is tough.
It does something to your ego. It was funny. I was talking to my employee a couple days ago, and we were discussing what has been going on with layoffs, and I shared my experience of being riffed. And I had the packet that they gave me when you walk in, and this is something that I learned. When you get scheduled for a one-on-one and you walk by the room and there are already two people in there, it's not a good sign.
Right.
If anybody's wearing a suit at Microsoft, it's not a good sign.
Right. And so I walked in and they told me, my position is no longer viable in the business and that I have 6 weeks to try and find a new job. And they gave me the packet, and I still remember royal blue, and I had it in a drawer for probably 10 years. Wow. It affected me so deeply that I couldn't get rid of it. It was like this albatross around my neck, and like a reminder of where I was. But I managed to, at the very 11th hour, end up in a position at an MSN Music and an MSN Entertainment, and ended up being there for 13 years and absolutely loving it. But it was a near miss.
Right.
And so, yeah, I definitely feel for the folks that are hurting right now. So.
And that's the other thing too, right? I think, I've been thinking quite a bit about this week, but also before as well. We tend to tie up our identity quite a bit to our day job, right?
Oh, yeah.
What we do professionally. By the way, now I was telling Donna the other day that now I'm starting to introduce myself hi, my name is Raji. I'm the author of the book, Daring to be Different, and I'm a partner engineering director at Microsoft. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the past, I am the partner engineering director at Microsoft, and I like to write, you know? So I think I'm seeing how that identity shift can happen too. But we tend to tie up a lot of our identity with our day job.
Yeah.
And that, I think having these kinds of side hustles that you have, I think can be very helpful, because even when you're having a very terrible day at work, you come home and you have something fun. Like when when I'm having a very tough day at work, now when I come home and I see notes from my readers about, how the stories I have told in this book and how the experiences have related have been very helpful. And they are from different cultures, different backgrounds, and, they're early in career. And it really warms my heart that something I have written has touched so many people in a good way. And that really compensates for the tough day I have had at work. So I'm a big believer in being able to diversify your identity, right? And so, whether you're a podcast host or writer or an author or, public speaker, I think that really does help in sort of broadening your horizon.
Yeah.
Well, this book of yours, I understand you've been, at least locally and maybe even further, and I don't know about it, have been doing a bunch of book signing type events.
That's right. So there's one coming up interestingly, the name of the place is Side Hustle.
Weird.
It's a bar in Kirkland. I mean, come on, it's we like to do different things because we dare to be different, right?
Yes.
So I'm having a book signing at a bar called Side Hustle in downtown Kirkland.
Yep.
February 18th, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m.
And we will be there.
We will be there.
Yeah, I
come
expect
meet
you
Raji.
to be there.
We
Yeah.
will 100% be there.
I'll do a little bit of a reading from one of the chapters of my book, and I'll take suggestions on what chapter I should read, maybe after the...
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, one of the chapters that resonated with me the most, I think it's chapter 26, is all about using what we've experienced and gone through to help elevate others, which obviously that is the vision and mission of this podcast, is elevating humanity one conversation at a time. And I think I've said it before. I was reading a book not too long ago where the author wrote, take my hand or take my life. Like, either reach down and help bring me up so that we can be on the same level, or put me out of my misery.
Right.
And so one of the things that really speaks to me, and I also mentor quite a few people and really, really love it, is being able to help people and being able to help people live a better life and feel more fulfilled, and be able to broadcast that positivity across the world. And so the fact that you take that as an opportunity to end the book with really like punched me right in the heart. And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, I love the tagline, the mission of your podcast too. That's super, super meaningful and very valuable. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, it was funny. We were just kind of sitting here spitballing ideas, and I was like, oh yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
It was freaking spot on too. It's like,
Yeah, I love it.
She said it, and I was like, yes, that is it.
No, I think that is very much a part of how I define my success, right? So, I give a talk about how I wrote the book, but also about what my journey has been at Microsoft in the technology field. And I end the talk like that, where I talk about what does it mean for me to be successful. When you look at someone like me at Microsoft as a partner engineering director, a lot of people are like, you've been successful at Microsoft, right? But what does success really mean? And I want everybody to sit down and think about this. We talked about introspection before, journaling before. I think it is it's a wonderful thing for you to sit down and really reflect on, what does success mean to you? Does it mean in your chosen career going from one level to another, getting promoted to this big title in your company? Is that what success is? Is that giving back to people, lifting someone else up? The quote that you mentioned, is that what success means to you? Is it having a lot of rich experiences? I went on a long hike last year in Switzerland, a 450-kilometer hike from east to west of Switzerland. Beautiful, beautiful journey, a lot of wonderful experiences, got to meet a lot of interesting people. So that gives a lot of new experience. Travel gives a lot of new experiences to my life. Is that success? Is that the meaning of success for you? Does it mean leaving a legacy behind? Does it mean, making a difference in the world, having a huge impact? What does success mean to you? Maybe it is a little bit of all of those, right? But I think for me, it is important to make a difference. It is important to make a difference to someone else. Even if this book that I've written just changes the life of 5 people, or at least helps them in some way, I think the book has been successful. I didn't write the book to become the next big best-selling author. I didn't write the book to make $1 million. That's not the goal of this book. It is to reach the 5 people that really need to hear these stories right now, to be able to, find some inspiration, find some practical help and advice that can help them. And I feel like the more I hear from my readers that the stories and the advice has been helpful, I feel like, this is achieved its goal. Right?
Yeah.
So that's why I wrote the book.
I love it.
Spectacular. Speaking of which, where can people, I know I found it on Amazon. I downloaded a digital version of it. Are there other places people can find your book?
Yeah, interestingly, this week, I don't know if it is this week, Amazon does these, random sales. Like they look at how the sales of the book has been going, and then they try to, change the algorithm to change the price, the list price of the book. So Amazon, there's a sale going on on Amazon for the paperback version of the book. Like you said, the Kindle version is available too. You can instantly buy it and read it. There is also a lot of independent bookstores that carry it. Elliott Bay in Seattle, if you happen to be in Seattle, Elliott Bay carries it. Third Place carries it. Mercer Island Books carries it. So a lot of different bookstores carry the book as well. So you can go to their website and you can order and you can get it shipped to the store. Or you can get it shipped to your house. I also have the signing event where I'm going to bring a stash of books, the author copies, and you can get a signed copy there as well.
Yep.
Ada's Technical Books and Cafe happens to be one of my favorite bookstores. It's I don't know if you've been to that bookstore.
Never even heard
of it.
It's in Capitol Hill. It's Ada Lovelace, the first programmer of the world. She started the whole programming language idea of programming language. The first programming language was from her. So
I was not familiar with this.
So look up Ada Lovelace.
Wasn't she in Hidden Figures? That was the
no.
Is that a
So
different one?
Ada Lovelace is she was way before Hidden Figures. She was the idea is that if you look her up, you'll see that in the first person to write a programming language, the inventor of the idea of programming language is Ada Lovelace, right? She was the daughter of Lord Byron, and she was a mathematician. She also wrote the first programming language. So look her up, and we'll probably do a little bit of a fact check on that before you.
You heard it here first.
That's right.
We'll get it in post-production.
That's right. No, but the Ada's Technical Books and Cafe, it's in Capitol Hill. It's a store full of technical books and books for women in STEM specifically.
Very cool.
Very inspirational. The concept of the store is pretty inspirational. I love it. And of course, they have great coffee. Seattle is famous for good coffee. So there's good coffee there. And they are organizing a signing event for the book and an author talk as well. So the talk is going to be, it's the tentative title that I'm going with, and tell me if it is good or not. It's Courage is Your Superpower and Other Secrets from Daring to Be Different.
Ooh, I love it. Yeah.
You like it? Mm-hmm. Because that's one of the themes of the book is embracing the unknown and, really making friends with your fear, right? So a lot of we talked about the advice that you hear from your managers. And at Microsoft, I've heard a lot of really good advice from a lot of good managers. And the very first manager that I had, and I talk about this in the book as well, he gave me this advice that was really relevant and very useful for the rest of my career at Microsoft. And that is that, every time you come into my office, Raji, I'm going to give you this bucket full of opportunities. And you can be successful in this company if you just take one opportunity out of it, deliver on it in a timely way, in a reliable way, with good quality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what is going to make you really knock it out of the park in this company is if you don't take an opportunity from my bucket, but if you come with your own opportunity and you execute on it. What he was trying to get me to do was have vision, to be able to spot opportunities in my horizon and shape the future, right? So that has been very useful in my career as well. So I think I talk about that in the talk, but courage is one of those things that I talk about quite a bit in the book, and I thought that might be a good talk to give at Ada's when I have my signing/author talk.
Yes,
absolutely, I love it.
Yeah,
I remember the first manager that I had at Microsoft. I had a similar experience where. I was working at a test lab, and my job was to go through and make sure that everything was Y2K compliant. And at one point, one of the servers broke, and we were in our what would end up being a stand-up. And I said, "Oh, I didn't break it," and I was just joking, just kind of a flippant joke. And my boss looked at me and he said, "If you aren't breaking it, you're not doing your job." And I was like, whoa, I'm supposed to do this? This is awesome. Right. And it, like I said, get goosebumps every time I think about him.
Oh, you really do. Wow.
Yeah. Telling me, you gotta break some eggs to make a quiche.
Right.
So.
Well, the other things you wanted to cover, I just kind of wanted to jump in and kind of get people interested and excited because, if a lot of our audience is a lot of tech folks, so really highly encourage people to go and check out your book and come and meet us in February at your book signing. It'd be fun.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to see more people. The more, the merrier. And obviously, I'd love to sign books for people, and I'll do a little bit of a reading as well in that event. And I'm sure a lot of my friends will be there.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I am. Our daughter is interested in going into a STEM field as well. She wants to go into.
How old is your daughter?
She's 18.
Wow.
So, interested in environmental science, and these gems are the types of things that I would really love for her to get earlier as opposed to later.
Yeah.
To set her up for success, because it is challenging to be a minority and a woman in STEM. And giving her as many tools as possible, as early as possible, is just, can't go wrong. So I was like, hey, you want to come to this book signing with me? Come on.
Yeah. No, I think if you can't make it to the side hustle one as well, Ada's Technical Books and Cafe in March. I think I'll put it up on my website.
What is your website?
RajiRaj.com.
Okay, we'll make sure to get that in the notes as well. So
Of course.
go to the website and find a signing to come and meet Raji at.
All my events, all the speaking events are there. We are planning. I'm planning obviously multiple signings in different east side of Seattle, west side of Seattle, but also online talks where people can come and join me for free, and I'll do
Very
a little bit
cool.
of what the book is about, and maybe talk more interactive with what people want to hear. So that's a good opportunity for people to meet me online and ask questions and get to know more about the book as well.
Yeah, I know Chris was like, what are your thoughts about the podcast? Like, you had a note that I read that was specifically related to asking Raji about her advice on something.
Oh, our money idea thing?
Oh.
There was one other question I did want to ask.
Go
I'm
ahead.
curious on that one was so we've recently, in trying to reframe our life over the last couple of years, have come up with this canary in the coal mine, if you will. Myself or Sarah, be stuck in a loop about something. And the question is, whoever it happens to be at the moment, like, what would $10 million Chris do? So at that moment, I'm stressing about buying a piece of equipment for the podcast, for instance. Right. If I didn't work and I had $10 million seems to be the magic number, just magically deposited into my account, would I be stressed about this, or do I just deal with it? And we just use it to figure out, like, what would you do with your life? So with that said, whatever that number is for you, 10 million, 100 million, a very large sum of money gets deposited into your account tomorrow. Right. What, if anything, are you doing different because of your wealth?
Can I reframe that question a little bit? Because a lot of times, I feel like my fears don't come from, thankfully, maybe I'm in a privileged position now. I was not, 40 years ago, 30 years ago. But because of, the work that I've done so far, it seems like, a lot of my fears don't come from money. They come from what am I going to do with my time and my life, right? What gives me meaning? Because if I, like we talked about, if I don't have my day job, a huge part of my day gets freed up. And what does it mean for the meaning and the purpose of my life? And that's where a lot of my fears come from. And so, I can answer that with, if I didn't have a day job, or if I took a huge sabbatical, and that's very relevant mainly because before the pandemic started, I was actually planning my sabbatical. So Microsoft gives you the sabbatical. Once you have a certain number of years at Microsoft, you get to have, you become eligible for a sabbatical, which gives you an addition 2-year vacation time. Now it's different, but you get like several weeks off that you can take. And so, I was planning my sabbatical before the pandemic happened. And at that time I was thinking I would go to Nepal. Okay. And I'll tell you why Nepal specifically, but I would go to Nepal, and part of my time I would be lost in the mountains. I would just be in the mountains doing my hiking thing, just, getting in my own headspace and just enjoying being there out there and doing a tough thing, hiking on, very high mountains, right? And part of the time I want to work with the community in Nepal, the low-income community and the women community in Nepal, and on specifically leadership skills and, how they can get into a field like tech, right? I maybe it's a school, maybe it's, something that I do with nonprofits in Nepal. But I wanted to do something like that where, for the first few weeks, I'll go do my thing and be in the mountains. And the rest of the time I would work with the community, the local community. And why Nepal? Because I talked about this very briefly, and at some point I'll do a long project where I'll actually write my memoir, right? And I will go into a little more deep into some of the actual life experiences I've had, how I grew up and all of that. But I talk about how when I was growing up, we didn't have access to sanitary pads, right? So when I was a girl and I started getting my periods, I didn't have access to sanitary pads because it was very expensive, and they were all imported sanitary pads in India. So it was just very expensive for us to buy. So I use rags and stuff like that. And the whole, even now, the idea of this menstruation is very taboo in India, right? So you get to sit in a place where you're kind of ostracized, cordoned off, and you're ostracized. You're not supposed to come and mingle with people. So it's not a very good place to be, and it's even worse in a place like Nepal. So I tell you that story mainly because I feel like there is still a lot of help that we need to do. We need, with women here, and how I can help with that, I think is something that is very top of mind for me. And because I've shared some of those experiences too, not exactly in that country, but also I know where it comes from, I feel like that's something that would be a very good use of my time.
Yeah, I resonate with that very deeply. When Jennifer McNiven came on the podcast and talked about her book, which is really interesting, and the shift that she had, Bali was the place that kind of hit me of like, oh yeah, this place is beautiful and mystical, but also could use some elevation of folks. So yeah.
I think you reframed that question properly, because that is really the meat of what we're trying to suss out is like, if you didn't have financial concerns whatsoever, if you could just do whatever, what would you be doing?
Yeah. Unlimited resources.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. How can I make an impact? And maybe that is the theme of this book, but also the theme of a lot of what I do in my life as well, is how can I make a difference to a community, to women, to people that are underserved, underprivileged in some way, right? So that's what a lot of the work that I do with mentoring, a lot of the work that I do with speaking, that all stems from that desire to do something with my life that'll make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
You mentioned some of the thing I brought up.
It was on the list, but who knows?
We just kind of go all over.
We wing it.
We want. Yeah.
So
no, cool. This has been awesome.
I'm so glad you could make it out to join us, and I hope that people will pick up your book and come and get to meet you in person.
Yeah. Well, and it's couched in a tech perspective, but the nuggets and the jewels that are in there really apply across the board.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. That is exactly so. When we build technology at Microsoft, elsewhere in the industry, one of the things that they talk about, probably this is something that maybe Donna talks about for Side Hustle, and maybe it is true in your own experience building this the podcast, is the way to success with any technology that you're building is to first start with the customer.
Absolutely.
Really internalize who your customer is, who is listening to you, who is using your product, who is reading your book, right? So every author has a little bit of that sort of a world in their mind. Who are the people that are going to read my book? And in my mind, it did, I had that very specific audience, right? People that are early in career, mid-career, people that want to go to higher levels in the technology field, that are specifically, introverted, quiet in some way, struggling because they look differently in their meeting rooms, women, immigrants, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the people that I wrote the book for. But the interesting thing that has happened is the number of readers that have picked up the book that are not in the field of tech, and then they have either wrote to me or wanted to meet me and tell me about how these stories and advice have really resonated for their own. A couple of weeks ago, I met with a person that she's going through, she's getting a degree in trauma counseling.
Oh,
right?
Okay. Yeah.
Very, very different field than technology.
Yeah.
And she grew up here. And, she was actually telling me that you write a lot of the stories about growing up in India and having these experiences. I grew up here. I went to a school, I believe it was a Christian school, and there were a lot of things that I write about that were very similar to her, experience in that school as well, right? So it's just amazing how these stories connect us as human beings, right? Even though we kind of think that, oh, this is in my little, pond. It's so global. The experiences are so shared, and the advice is so much more applicable to just not the field of tech.
Exactly.
All interconnected.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, Raji. We look forward to seeing you in February in person for the book signing.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, I just want to tell one story
Yes,
about
please.
Sarah.
Oh, yes. Definitely
Because
listen.
Please.
we talk about courage a lot in this book, and we talked about it in the episode as well, right? But I remember, Sarah, I don't know if you remember this. There was one time when we were running, you, me, Nancy, Jane, we were all running. It was I think it was in Microsoft campus, just the intersection of 148th and 51st or something like that. We were running. It was pretty dark. We usually run pretty early in the morning, right? And it's the winter and it's pretty dark. And I think there was a car that cut us off.
Yep.
Do you remember that?
Uh-huh.
And do you remember what you did?
I kicked it. I kicked his car.
And I was like, what the heck is Sarah doing? And I was like, I had this fear that, oh my God, the guy is going to get out of his car and shoot us or something.
And I was like, don't you mess with my people.
No, you're so impressed by your bravery and your courage. Hats off. She's a role model.
Oh my goodness.
She is not a woman that I spend a whole lot of time worrying about.
Yeah.
What if something happens to your wife?
No.
It won't happen. Don't worry. She'll
What
be
if
fine.
somebody kidnaps her? They'll bring her back.
I think that courage is super, super helpful.
Yeah.
Not just for, protecting your friends when a car cuts you off,
Right.
but also for in your professional life and just to
Yeah.
have a really good experiences and really broaden your life, right?
Yeah. Well, and what's the saying? Everything you want is on the other side of fear.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love the description you talk about being 6 and leaving school and, just.
The audacity of it, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what I found. I mean, you're very audacious. And
Oh, yeah.
I hope that the people
Solid
listening
description.
listening to this will, become more audacious or really nurture their audacity. I think that
Yeah.
is my hope with the title of the book too, Daring to be Different,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, everything about it resonated with me, so it's fabulous.
Awesome.
Go
Well, thank
check
you
it
for interviewing me. I think this has been such a fun thing to do.
Yeah, thank you
And
for coming on the show.
We love it. And
show.
hopefully we'll talk to you again in the future because, there's so many of these subjects we could just dig into and spend an entire session
Yeah.
on. So
I have a feeling we'll have you back.
I have a feeling we'll hear from you again. So
Yeah.
thanks again.
Cool.
And stay elevated, folks.